Is that a black screen?
I'll try it again.
Finish. Did they go back? Let's see. Yeah. Hello, welcome to the daily unit NACP monthly community meeting titled Moving Beyond the Outrage. Next steps to becoming civically engaged. Tonight we have a very esteemed panel that our chair of communications, press and publicity is going to introduce and come this way. Chair Lady Smith.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this timely and important conversation, moving beyond the outrage, next steps to becoming civically engaged. So it is my honor to introduce this esteemed panel of change makers and leaders to this conversation. So without further ado, there is a bit of a change to our lineup. Adrienne Miller, the executive director of the NCCJ, is under the weather. So in her stead, in very, very capable hands, I introduce you to Audrey Logan. She's the current program manager for workplace development at the National Conference for Community Justice and for Greater Dayton, NCCJ for short. Her duties involve educating and training organizations about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Audrey has been an educator and an advocate of education for nearly 20 years, 15 of those years with her previous employer, Dayton Public Schools. She has a BA in English Literature from Wright State University and taught writing to students for 6 years. She is a licensed minister in the state of Ohio and is an active ministry leader in her church. She's the newest board member of the Dayton Public Schools Foundation. She lives in Northwest Dayton and is an active community committee member of the Northwest Dayton Partnership Collaborative. Audrey is a native Daytonian, and in her spare time, she enjoys reading, solving word puzzles, adult coloring, and singing in the shower. She is the mother of 2 adult daughters, 1 four-legged son, and a grandmother of 2. We welcome you, Audrey, to the family. Deja Demings, named the Business Journal's class of 40 under 40, is a native of West Dayton, Ohio, and the executive director of the Dayton Young Black Professionals. Through this role, she has worked to create a network that is a safe haven for young African-American career men and women to unite, network, cultivate their resources, and thrive together. Demings is a product of Central State University and Wilberforce University, the only 2 historically Black college universities in the state of Ohio. She is committed to a life of service and philanthropy for minority groups and marginalized people everywhere. She speaks for those who don't just want to sharpen their skill sets, but also want to figure out what their skill sets are and how to collectively work with the community to curate the world we want to see. We welcome you to the panel, Deja. Nicole Miller is the executive director of the Miami Valley Urban League, a division of the Urban League of Greater Southwestern Ohio. Nicole is a mission-driven, lifelong public servant with immense experience in community outreach, public policy, fundraising, and media relations. Nicole Miller is a graduate of Meadowdale High School, Dayton, Ohio, and Miami University in Oxford. She previously served as the Community Relations Manager for the Greater Dayton RTA. Prior to returning to Dayton, she worked with a team of consultants to develop the National Outreach Plan for the 2020 census, as well as served as Chief of Staff for Chicago's 7th Ward Alderman. She serves on the board for Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Greater Edgemont Community Coalition, 5 Rivers Health Center Edgemont Campus Board, African American Community Fund Board, City of Dayton's Community Development Advisory Board, On Main Advisory Board, Citywide Development Corporation, and the Greater Dayton RTA Board of Trustees. She is a member of St. Benedict Catholic Church and resides in the New Catalpa neighborhood with her dog Neo. She's the proud auntie of Brianna Robinson and Mariana Miller. We welcome you to the panel.
All right.
Last but not least, Kia Wright is the founder and executive director of Voices Corporation, a graduate of Lawrence Central High School in Indianapolis, Indiana. She went on to attend Indiana State University on a full ride track and field scholarship. While earning the master's degree in criminology, Mrs. Wright obtained employment with the Vico County Juvenile Probation Department in 2004, where she developed a passion for community development. Moving back to Indianapolis in 2008, working for the Marion County Juvenile Probation, she gained a better understanding of systemic trauma and root causes of delinquent and criminal behavior. Utilizing the power of the arts, in 2010, she founded Voices with a vision of empowering communities of color to restore themselves through communal healing, artistic expression, and economic mobility. In 2012, she walked away from probation and began community work as a home-based case manager, mentor, tutor, and parent education specialist. In 2017, Voices Corporation was awarded contracts with the Indiana Department of Child Services and Marion County Juvenile Probation to offer services that system impact youth and families. Voices was created to center the lived experience of Black and Brown communities, to provide safe spaces for self-expression, and to begin the journey of healing. Today, Voices serves the span of 36 Indianapolis zip codes, 7 Indiana counties, and serves 750 plus youth and families annually. Mrs. Wright is a founding board member for Invent Learning Hub Charter School, a member of the Indiana Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee, Juvenile Detention Alternatives to Detention Steering Committee, Peer Source Indiana Health Equity Collaborative, Maternal Child and Health Workforce Development Initiative, Franciscan Health Resilience Coalition, National Youth Employment Coalition, and an alum of the Indiana Youth Services Association Executive Journey Fellowship. We welcome you, Kia Wright, to the panel. As you can tell, we have an exciting panel of very talented and innovative leaders who are doing phenomenal work, and they are perfectly qualified and capable of explaining next steps in becoming civically engaged. So we'll start off with our questions. The first question to the panel, with detailing something that we all know too well. So almost a quarter of the world's population is now on Facebook. With 4.2 billion social media users worldwide as of January 2022, data suggests that the emergence of social media stifles real activism, even describing the shift as slacktivism, which is defined as supporting a political or social cause by social media or online petitions with little follow-through or effort. What can we do to become more engaged in our communities? And what are some of those barriers that currently exist? We'll start with Ms. Andra.
Well, thank you. Good evening, everybody. For me and for NCCJ, engagement starts with building relationships within our communities. This is at least a two-pronged approach. Relationships start in person, one, and number two, with members of the community. But relationships can be built through social media. Also within this, and we're probably going to touch on this a little later, when you talk about the different generations and utilizing social media. I don't necessarily want to say that it will stifle things, because I know that you can be an activist and use social media as a tool for you to do your work. We are now living in this time and in this day and age where technology should be our friend more than our enemy. So let's work hard to do that. So that's pretty much where I stand when it comes to that.
Yes, I'll start with the social media part. If it wasn't for things being posted on social media, 90% of our kids would that is the way to them. I don't believe there's a right or wrong way to, do activism, if that makes sense. Some people, the most that they can do is share something, but you never know who sees it, right? Some people like to protest, some people like to write letters, like there's so many different things for people to do to, you know, have change. What was the first part of the question?
What are some of the things that we can do in the community to become more? What are some of the barriers that exist?
Build community, there, you have to build trust. Community is not just a place, community is home, right? And in order to do that, you do have to be a place where you can be vulnerable with someone else, so you know you can learn from each other, right? Yeah, barriers. I would say the perceptions that people have about either what they're doing, who they are, things like that, which is a barrier in our community, but that's probably in every community. But just feeling okay to talk to somebody, you know, ask questions, you know, things like that.
So when I worked on the 2010 census in Chicago, I worked for a gentleman, Stan Moore, who was the first Black in like every endeavor at the Census Bureau. And so but what he was really known for was his community outreach, you know, efforts in getting people involved in the census, which is not a sexy subject or anything like that. But some of the tactics that he used, I have carried with me since 2010. And I think that the most important one was meeting people where they are. So some people live in the space in social media, but a lot of people like that in-person contact. You know, I would say take to the streets, you know, knock on the doors, engage with the folks. And that is something that tended to be an effective tool in terms of also helping to understand what the needs of the community are, you know, that engagement, asking people, you know, and correcting, you know, a lot of the misinformation. I remember when I moved back to Dayton, you know, just working on different campaigns and things like that. Talking, one element that I enjoyed most was getting out, knocking on doors and talk to the people and having a understanding of what their interests were, you know, what their concerns were, and also giving them more accurate information or resources to do the research on their own. My niece and I mentioned about being a auntie, my niece and I have these conversations all the time where I'm challenging things that she's learning on TikTok because they're not necessarily the most accurate information. And so, you know, I'm like, but it's become interesting to me that, you know, this is where 16, 17 years old, this is where she's receiving her information about bail reform in Chicago, saying that they're letting murderers loose. And so, you know, I'm calling Chicago like, what is this my niece is talking about? And, you know, the people who are in the state legislature who I'm having these conversations with, or of the legal community, they're explaining it to me so that I can give her the correct information. And it's not really about letting murderers out as much as it is about the disparities in incarceration when, you know, people of color are locked up and they don't necessarily have the funds to, or the money to get out, whereas people of majority populations, you know, they're in and out, you know, as quickly as they've been processed. So just making sure that we are armed with correct information, that we are, you know, feel comfortable with sharing that information. But I believe you have to play in all these spaces, social media, you know, protesting, letter campaign. I think Deja said that, you know, best is that, you know, we have to play in all these spaces because you never know where people are getting their information from, but also making sure that we're armed with the right information and resources for people to do their own research. I feel like social media is a very powerful tool, especially when we're talking about youth, because as you guys have said, that is where they're living in that space. They're being bombarded with images every day, but it also gives them a level of awareness that I don't think, as I was growing up as a teen, had access to the amount of information that they had, right? And so we're seeing it used in a lot of different ways with the young people in Indianapolis in particular. They're using it to advocate for different spaces, homelessness, juvenile justice, living in food deserts and things like that. And so it's been incredibly powerful and moving to see them utilize social media in that way. I think sometimes the trouble comes in is because that is their only source of information. When we're talking with, the young people that we're working with, like you said, they're getting all of their information from Instagram, TikTok, and things like that. So how do we counter that? And I think we do that, as these women up here have talked about in the spaces that we're in, when we're building community with, young people and just people in general. We've heard discussion about trust, but it's also repairing some of that harm and acknowledging that these young people are shut down for a reason, right? So it's not as easy for them to open up to a counselor or to a teacher. And so how do we create spaces for them to feel safe to be able to do so? Some of the barriers are, I think, when us as, viewed as experts in our field are coming into community spaces, thinking that we are the ones educating them, instead of making sure that they feel centered in that experience and that we are looking at them as the experts with the lived experience and informing us on how we need to move. And I think that's the biggest thing that moving from social media to, into community, what does that activism look like? And for me and for our organization, and centering those with those lived experiences and pulling off of their experience to guide the work that we're doing.
Lots of good stuff there, and I heard this notion of trust, right, which is this truth over time. So we need time just to cultivate the spaces and where we can acknowledge that we have trust in the community, we have trust in the information. Let's build on the fact that perhaps misinformation is a barrier, right? So within your organizations and the work that you do, what are some of the things that you're doing to put out accurate information or to put out viable information? What do those things look like to you, and what tools are you utilizing so that your community and the respective people, your respective stakeholders have access to true and valid information?
So for NCCJ, we have a mobile opportunity center, which is called our Mock Mobile. And with this Mock Mobile, we have the opportunity to not let the barriers stop us, but we can actually bring this, it's a shuttle bus. We can bring this to wherever is needed. And with that, we're able to bring resources. So this shuttle bus allows us to have whatever organization to utilize it for free, and then to also bring in their information. If they want to have some type of session, some type of classes, anything like that, they can bring those things to our shuttle bus and meet someone at a designated location. So it could be, right now we are at the Northwest Dayton Library. We're also at Gym City Market. We are also partnering with some other areas soon to come. And we've also been in Valerie Woods. It used to be Valerie Arms Apartments. We are over there too. And we have a designated person who handles that. Her name is Naomi, and she's out here in the community. She lives in Northwest Dayton as well. And she's out here making those connections with different people. One of the first things that we did with the Mock Mobile in January was go to the Northwest Dayton Library, and we had counselors on there that were talking about trauma, how to handle that, and things like that. And then we had an activity on the Mock Mobile, and it was so they could, what was it? It was making scents, and it was lotion along with some different essential oils, and they could make that. They could also talk to a counselor that was on board our shuttle bus, and they could ask questions. They could even have an opportunity to share in that space. So that's some of the things that we are utilizing, and we're still partnering with more people. And it is free for us to have anyone who wants to partner with us to utilize our shuttle bus. It's free. We can have all your resources. If you can't do something on the shuttle bus, if you give us some resources, we can pass them out. Because one of the things that I found out is that there are a lot of things going on in the community, but a lot of people don't know what's going on. And so here's an opportunity that we can pass out some things.
If there's not anything else, David's gonna have to leave. Yeah, they're gonna leave forever. But the way that we eliminate barriers is by community, and I'll explain what that means. In the young professional organization, we have people from all different everything. People who, graduated high school, some people who didn't, some people that went to college, doctors, lawyers, it just depends. And we do check our information with our lawyers, right? And we ask different ones because everyone has a different, a different appointment, different view. But the moral of the story is that we get out. As people send us job information stuff, we send it out regularly. Like we not only have text messaging and Instagram and stuff like that, but we have what is called GroupMe. And for those of you at work, I'll say like Slack, it's something like that with the individual channels and things like that. And send it out to each other that way. And word of mouth. As long as you're in a space, like you can, make a change, even when you don't know that you can. So I would just say being aware of knowing that community that you want to be, being, I'll say, intentional with the spaces that you're in and what you're trying to do, and always meet the people where they are.
So the Urban League is primarily work in the workforce development space. And so what we do is we provide, we're going back in person finally, but we've been providing, job readiness training, virtually with workshops to help people with, learning skills of resumes, job searches, interviewing, things of that nature. But beyond that, once they complete our workshop, we don't just congratulate them and send them on their way. We also continue to hold their hand throughout the process because we're in the business of removing barriers, and a lot of the barrier removals that need to take place are around transportation and childcare and housing for a lot of the people who are trying to pivot or enter the workforce or create some more of a destiny for them and their families, and so that's the business that we're in, is in, barrier removal and changing generational poverty. And it's not something that will happen overnight, but we do it on an individual basis. If we're working with an individual, they are a member of the family, and so we have that impact by, making sure that they're employed or that they're upskilled so that they can compete better for the jobs that will be here, not just a job for today, but for career for tomorrow. So
Voice of Services intersects a lot of different systems. It's a juvenile delinquency system, education, mental health. We deal a lot with the social determinants of health and everything that we're doing. Kind of like I talked about earlier, going to community and where they are. We're grounded under healing centered engagement, which talks about placing those most impacted in positions of power. And I think that's our best way on how we combat the negative information that, they are seeing. So for us, that's training them to be at the tables with us, right? That's not just us sitting at the tables in silos and making decisions about our community. It's training them to be able to be at the tables with us to start that advocacy and that policy work from the beginning. It's also going into spaces like barbershops. We host Black male mental health events almost every month. And they're in various different places to reduce some of those barriers of like transportation, those kind of things. We'll bring a mental health specialist into the barbershop and just chop it up. This month we were at a fitness gym locally in Indianapolis to really talk about like fatherhood, bringing down some of the stigma regarding mental health and creating these safe spaces for Black men to be able to process these type of conversations. And so for us, removing the barriers, again, is going into spaces that they are already existing and feel safe in and bringing information to them, but then also providing some training for them to be at tables with us. We have a Power and Promise program that trains youth ages 12 to 24, and they get paid to go through 6 weeks of training with us. So leadership, community organizing, advocacy, all these different things. We're in 14 different schools in the jail in Marion County, in Indianapolis, but they're on committees with every adult that's connected to Voices organization. They're sitting on the Juvenile Justice State Oversight Committee with us. They're doing some of the DEI work with us. We're putting them on boards of schools and things like that so that they're getting the accurate information, then they're able to spread that information out to their peers.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if there is anyone who has any questions for our panelists, Kirsten Farmer will be going around with the note cards. If you have a question, something that you want to ask, just raise your hand and she'll give you a card so you can write down that information so we can definitely get it to the panelists to get their insight. Thank you, Kirsten. So what I'm hearing from the panel is this idea of being proximate, right? You can't serve the people unless you know the people, and the people who are closest to the pain need to be closest to the power to be able to make decisions. So with that, and this is an interesting question, but I just want to see y'all's take on it. From your industry viewpoint, which population stands to gain the most by being supported by activism and by being involved and plugged into the community? We'll start with you, Kim.
Well, our organization is primarily young Black men between the ages of 12 and 25. 87% of our the work that we do is specifically targeted for them. And so that's naturally going to be my answer is our young Black men. I think, you know, historically, we can go down the line of the things that Black men have had to experience. And I think if anybody's going to benefit the most, it's going to be our young men.
Yeah, I think I concur. I mean, our organization, we're focused on the Black population, but specifically more around 18 to 32 years old. You know, we help with financial coaching. We help with, you know, skills upskilling. We help with leadership development, things of that nature. So our target population that we advocate most for are Black adults, 18 to 34 years old, 32, I'm sorry, 32 years old.
I will say that, first, we're a young professional organization, so you would automatically assume that it's just professionals, right? I believe in the intergenerational model. So I have some people, I have Ben Davis, you know what I mean, to the kids that we serve that are 4 and 5, you know what I mean, in different after school programs. So I feel that we keep them together, mixed up so that everybody can learn from somebody, right? We learn from the kids learn from the elders learn from the kids. So I don't think that there necessarily is an age limit. I think that it being intergenerational kind of impacts everyone.
So from the standpoint of NCCJ, this is a tough question. So for us, it's going to be any under marginalized community. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for anyone who has not had a fair opportunity. And we want to make sure that we are in a space or in an area where we can advocate for them to the best of our ability. We want to bring them many of our programs. We have a lot of youth programs. We also believe that what we are planting now will somehow in our future be something that will spring forth. So what we're doing now are the seeds that we have planted now. And then even if we don't see them in my generation's time, I'm hoping that we do. But if we don't, we know that we have planted that seed and we're out here making that change. One of the things about change is it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. We may not see those results right now, but if we keep going and keep going and keep going and keep depositing and things like that, I believe that we will reap those benefits afterwards. And we want to make an impact wherever we are at, whatever community. We want to stay in the community. We want to do whatever is possible within our capacity to educate and to, you know, remove all kinds of barriers, whatever we can do.
Thank you. And that's so true that there are various segments of our population and there are different generations who react to the information that they receive at different times. Maybe they see something on social media, maybe it's a Facebook, it's a Twitter, it's a TikTok. I have certain family members who like TikTok, not going to mention any names, nobody was decision. But there's various mediums in which you're going to receive your information and where you're going to get that news to sometimes, you know, it elicits various different feelings. Sometimes those are uncomfy feelings, things that we don't want to face, but sometimes it's very vital information. So the question to the panel is, what can we do to ensure that each respective generation in the communities that we interact with has access to that equitable information? We kind of touched on it earlier. But do we do anything differently if we're trying to target a different generation? Do we do anything differently if we're talking about our youth versus our elders? What are some of those things that we can do just to make sure that they're just as civically engaged their civic engagement across the board.
Social media has changed the way we receive information. Everything is immediate. It's almost like when we got to use microwave ovens. We wanted everything immediately. We want to know, we want to see it immediately. And because we have these wonderful walking computers with us, we have the opportunity to see everything immediately. So when you're seeing things immediately though, are they always the right things that we're seeing? Because there are ways that you can record something and then not show it in its entirety. So now there's an opportunity for us to not have the full story or the full capacity that we need to make an informed decision. The problem with that is that could cause our older generation who's not all the way on board with technology to say, that's why I don't trust that, that's why that's no good, it's not working for us. However, you have our young people that say, yes, that's the best way we can get information. So how can we bridge the gap and allow those two different generations to come together? There needs to be some type of happy medium. When my mom, she's deceased now, but when she was living, she didn't mind getting on social media. I couldn't believe that she had a Facebook page. I was like, what are you doing with a Facebook page? She said, I want to know what's going on too. So I like the fact that she was ready to know what was going on. And she was willing to learn. So even her grandchildren had to come over and teach her something. So I don't want us to say that it's separate and it should be only for young people. I think we should be able to find a happy medium where we can all give information, but we just have to make sure that we're getting the right information. Sometimes it's best to do your fact check. So maybe you might have seen it on TikTok and it might be some truth to it. However, you might need to go research some more things to find out the whole entire truth of the matter. So that's my take on it. And that's, kind of where we're at.
I feel like this is, of course, we serve whoever intergenerationally, but I feel like, of course, you have to meet the different age groups there are different approaches that have to be taken too. So yes, we can do social media for everybody, but we actually still write letters. You know what I mean? Like our generation is like, don't write me a letter, you can text me, but that's the way that I get to my grandma and her friends, right? So that's when you lean on community. You lean on NCCJ, you lean on Urban League, when it's people that is in that age bracket, you literally just point them to the next community. That's what community is.
And what I also add to that is like, again, meet people where they are. I still, advertise on Black media, whether it's print or radio, because my grandmother still gets a subscription to the Dayton Weekly and still shares whatever news that is in the Dayton, whoever in the family needs it. I call anybody knows my family, knows it's a very large family, and I call them my focus group. So if I want a varied opinion on any subject matter, all I have to do is meet up at my grandma's house and everybody's there and just discuss it, and it has a better understanding. But, we challenge one another with what is factual information, what is, someone's opinion, but still, it still creates a space where they become ambassadors or messengers because they still have their own nucleus of friends. So word of mouth still works as well. But I say you still have to play in all these spaces. You have to learn how to talk in 140 characters or less, because that's all people. And, as much as I hate the, the sensationalized headlines, use your powers for good, not for evil, flip it, not make sure that the sensation isn't always so negative, but it's also, showing, the positive or, or laying out the argument or the case for or against an issue.
I don't have too much more to offer, just on how we create those intergenerational conversations and bringing folks together. When we started the Black Male Mental Health Initiative in the barbershops, it was older Black men with younger Black men trying to create this space for our older Black men with guiding, almost like a mentor, capacity. And I think that's, what everybody is spoke to here is meeting folks where they are, you know what I mean, and utilizing all the channels, available to us. I don't think that there's going to be a complete bridge of the gap on social media in those regards, but I do think it creates moments to have conversation starters. It creates moments to extend those invitations out and try to build community better.
And I will just want to add one thing. There are so many channels out there. It is exhausting, and you don't know which one is, the right, if you don't know that you're giving a message to who the message is intended to be received by. But it's like you still have to put forth the effort and utilize as many as you can, just thinking about the different demographics.
And to that point, we are in information overload, right? You can go anywhere, anybody's got a website.com, and there's just lots and lots of information that you have to sift through to become informed and to make sure that, again, to the heading of this event is, outrage, right? It's due to elicit some kind of response, some kind of to get you to click and to get you to continue to looking through things. And sometimes sometimes there's truth to it, but we have to be, intentional about finding the accuracy in the information that we receive and just being good consumers over what we're receiving. So to that point, ultimately, where does the responsibility rest regarding over coverage, panic, and misinformation? Is it with the outlets? We've seen lots of information in the news about these big tech companies who are being, scrutinized for the way that they are handling information and misinformation. They have warnings around certain content and things of that nature. Or is it with us? Do we have to be responsible and be intentional about what we're consuming? So I open that up to the panel. Keel, we'll start with you.
I think it's a shared responsibility. We can't rely, to having a government for just about anything sometimes. And so I think, as a mother, I'm responsible for, the content that my kids consume, right? Taking, precautions in that space. As an executive director, making sure that I'm countering the information that's being put out there. So I think it's a shared responsibility between community members, between entities, to take that responsibility, but then all our own personal responsibility, right? Like, how do we disconnect? How do we filter what is fed to us? We talk to our kids a lot about messaging and imagery that they take in constantly and how that impacts their development and how that impacts how they, behave in, daily life. And so, it's that personal accountability of limiting and making sure that we're taking in more positive information, or at least seeking truth in what is presented out there.
I echo what Kia says, but I also think it goes back to, what the elders say, consider the source, it's like, determine who your source is, but who may be my trusted source may not be someone else's trusted source. So, it's still that personal accountability.
I would say the accountability goes on both ends, but I wouldn't put it on the children. Because I feel like they're in a space where they are supposed to be learning and doing what they see. Unfortunately, if that's good or bad, that's what happens, right? And as far as the media go, of course, we can't do anything with ABC. Like, you can't say that, but I can call Kajasia from WDT9, like, hey, that wasn't it. You probably should get a different perspective. You know what I mean? So holding our local news outlets accountable. Yes, we have the Dayton Weekly, which tells everything, we need to know and stuff like that, but there has to be another way. That can't be the only way that we get to people to show them different things. So I would say it's on us. The intergenerational mentorship is Sankofa for the few that know what that is. It's our responsibility to take care of each other.
So I'm gonna diddle on yours. I feel like if we as community people or as consumers, if we stop watching all of the negative stories The news outlets would have to change their agendas. We keep watching it. What is it, World Star? Why do we watch that? It's not even important. It's, so many derogatory things to our community. So why do we keep watching it? If we stop watching the things that are negative, that will give them an opportunity to say, okay, that's not giving us any ratings. There's a saying that goes out that says, if it bleeds, it leads. And that's what we want to see. I'm tired of seeing that. I don't know about y'all. That's where my outrage is. I'm tired of seeing all of that.
And that's an interesting point, Audrey. And I think that, we do, like we take in this information and sometimes it causes like a very, very strong reaction. Sometimes it leads us to a place where it's probably just a little bit too much negativity, but what about the circumstances where there is action? So for us, in this discussion, we want to figure out what are those next steps to becoming civically engaged. We've got a whole panel of community leaders who are doing work in the communities, for the communities, and that's very, very pivotal. So I want to get their take on what if, you see something on the news or you see something in social media that you don't agree with and you think that there needs to be change or this needs to be rectified, or there needs to be some sort of justice. What can you do as a citizen to become civically engaged? We'll start with you, Nicole. Oh, go ahead, Paige.
No, she-
I think this is a little difficult. My answer would be the same pre-pandemic that it is now, but it's a little bit more difficult because of the pandemic. But it's like, get outside the house, it's like, just don't sit in the house and, absorb the information, whether it's via television, social media or whatever, but actually get out and get involved and get engaged. You have people on this panel at a public forum that's hosted by another organization that we're all doing great work out here, but we need the people to join the different movements, so that's what I just get outside the house first.
I would say, find something that you're interested in. That's what we tell kids, right? Like, what do you like to do? Okay, we'll do that. Like, it's the same thing with us. Anything that we're interested in. If we're interested in politics, we can do that. If we're interested in voting, there's a space for that. And it's our responsibility to kind of let people know those spaces that are available that we know of. Like what's important with, like, how important is information if you don't share it, right? So just being willing to share what those spaces are for people that don't even know about it, or things like that.
So for me, I'm thinking, volunteer more. If you have the time, if you're able, go and volunteer. So as you said, what is it that, you have a passion for? I think whatever it is that you feel needs to be changed, I think you should go out and change it. So find somewhere. I mean, I use Google a lot. I don't know about y'all, but when I want to find out something, where to go, where something's happening at, I'm gonna Google it and find out. When I find that out, then I'm gonna go and see, well, do I know anybody that's connected with that? If I don't know anybody that's connected with that, I'm gonna dig a little more, do a little bit more research. And then I'm really interested in the people who's out there doing the work. So people are always out here doing the work. You just gotta find out where they are so you can join in and put yourself in what is the word I'm trying to say? I'm trying to say, get yourself involved in it so you can be a part of the change. So we always complain about things not getting done, but I promise you, there are people out here doing it. They just need some more help.
And we've got some questions from the floor, so then I'm going to leave this with you, Kia, because they kind of go hand in hand. It's how do we get more young people involved in the movement? How are we recruiting people to do the work? And then specifically to you, Kia, how did you win youth over to participate in experiences for leadership? How did the school district respond to your success? So that question is, how do we get generally everyone involved to do the work? And then specifically, how do we get youth involved?
How to get folks involved in our experiences, showing value in what they have to offer. That value can look a lot of different ways. It can look like a position of power on a committee. It could look like them leading discussion. It could look like us paying them, valuing their time. And that's honestly how we won young people over. We wrote lots of grants to be able to pay them for their time. We asked for committees to be changed from daytime committees to evenings so that youth could participate in those spaces. We asked for them to be put in positions where they actually have voting powers on boards and things like that. And to circle back to the question, you know, what you do after you read something or you see something, it doesn't have to be a big act. I think sometimes we get overwhelmed or we don't do anything because it feels too overwhelming. But it can be going to the neighborhood association meetings. It could be going to the city county meetings and hearing and learning what's impacting you. It could be volunteering to be a precinct leader. It could be so many different things that simply by you taking up space and using your voice, especially for Black folks, taking up space can be an act of activism in itself.
Yeah, I don't know that I have the real answer, but because it's like throwing spaghetti on the wall, see what sticks. But you know, and to your point, like our after school youth program, we have, you know, we pay the participants $25 a session, and they're learning different leadership skills. You know, they're learning, you know, about mental health. They're learning etiquette. You know, things of that nature. We're also working on a different program with youth, and it's with the Edgemont and Caroline neighborhoods, where we put together a curriculum that's like three sessions where they, at the end of it, they receive a bicycle. One of them is bicycle maintenance. One of them is, you know, how to learn tricks and skills. And the third one is, you know, how to take care of the bike park, or I guess I should mention that, you know, it's related to the mountain bike park that's being built in Welcome Park, you know, that requires a specific bike that most kids in that neighborhood don't have the income to purchase. But we wanted to make sure that all the kids, you know, day one when the park is open, have access to use that facility. So it's just, you know, trying to provide them with outlets that they would enjoy. You know, we're having our first kickoff on Saturday. You know, our goal is 20 kids. We're currently at 13 right now. So, you know, if anybody get in touch with the Urban League who's interested in mountain bike park.
I get asked a question about how to get younger people involved all the time. I will say that it's a work in progress. I can definitely see the changes now versus what it looked like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, as far as my generation getting involved. Everybody is like starting organizations. They're starting businesses. They have a different sense of community now that they've tried it. And that's what I was going to say about like the other people. Like, some people are scared to do something different, right? Like driving down the street with my grandma and there's a homeless guy sitting in front of the church, and she's like, "It's that church's responsibility to feed them. Why don't you go volunteer at the pantry?" You know what I mean? So there are different ways to like show that. And as far as with the little kids, we talk to them. I'm the site coordinator for the schools in Northwest Dayton, Fairview, EJ Brown. And our little kids, they get buzzwords every week. So the buzzwords this month were like freedom and activism and things like that. And that's even for the kindergartners. The kindergarten, they might not be able to spell it, but they can tell you what it is and they can tell you what it means, like in their own way, right? To show that they comprehended and they grasped that. Like we had a little boy that was getting in trouble. And I'm like, "Yo, like, what are you doing? Like, what makes you think you can do that?" "My freedom." So it's like, okay, you pay attention. You're crazy. You pay attention though, and you understand, you know what I mean? Still looking at it deeper than what it is. Like, yes, it's hilarious, right? But this kindergartner knows what freedom is. And he could tell somebody else, even if it is something crazy, he could still explain it in a way that his peers understand. And that's what we want to do. We want to put people in a position to not only, and kids too, not only to like be at the table, but help them create their own. Like, all of us have something that's for somebody else, right? And it's just like, what does it look like to plant that seed? And I think that's what's happening with the kids. Like the teenagers that I know, they're doing more than what the teenagers were doing when I was younger. YLAG is younger than that. They're doing more than any other kids their age that I've ever seen, you know what I mean? And they've put kids through that are in college now. So those people are a reflection of that, and they're going out and do the work because it was planted into them. So I would say just being really intentional about the way that we plan into our kids and our young adults so that they feel safe and they feel like they can trust what's going on and they feel like their input matters.
I agree with things that you're saying. Everybody on the panel, I think it's all of us. We have to work together because we all have something to offer. I think one of the things we should do when it comes to our young people, we need to listen to them. Even if they got the wrong answer, let's help them get the right answer. But we should definitely listen to them because they are our future. So as we are passing things on to them, because we are the history, we can still listen to them and we can collaborate together. It's important that they feel like they're included, that they matter, and that we actually care about them. I think that's the first place. And then the other thing that I say to get youth together, just give them some food.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought I'd share.
In a Chromebook.
There's an African proverb that says that those not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. So we need to be very, very mindful how we engage these young people. And I can't take credit for that African proverb. That's Kia right there. Very awesome. But we just need to be very intentional about how we interact with these young people and giving them the space to articulate their voices, their issues, their concerns, and all the things that are important to them, because ultimately they're going to be our leaders one day. So we need to make sure that we're pouring into them. We have a question from the floor that's about a very, very specific issue dealing with our youth. Within the last 3 months, Dayton Public Schools has experienced 3 suicides within our school system. Please provide insight on how we can counteract these occurrences within DPS.
As someone that works in the elementary, middle school, and high school space, I would say they should probably revisit the bullying policy. If you're in the schools and you see like what's going on, it blows you. Like it is the most disturbing thing I've ever seen. And that has to be addressed. Because it's to the point where, and this is not just at my schools, this is at my different schools in Dayton, but kids will get in trouble for fighting and will not get sent. Or kids can go to school and not wear a uniform and not get sent home. So it's just like, what was the question?
So what can we do to counteract these occurrences specifically as it pertains to suicide?
Love on our kids. I would say that if they are not getting it at home, they are looking for it somewhere else. And we have to listen to our kids. We have to pay attention to our kids. A lot of kids are being raised by phone right now. We have to pay attention to them to see if there are signs of something changing. You know what I mean? Like as a parent, you should be able to feel it, right? Like, look, your face don't look right. Like, come here, let's talk. Or just having conversations normally all the time anyway, so that they feel comfortable, that they can come to you when things like that happen. And we have to teach our kids, you can't do that to people. Like sometimes our kids are the problem, right? So we have to tell them like, hey, like that's not gonna work, you know, because that's not what I believe in. That's not what I stand for. You're a product of me. And I know that you didn't get that from me. So just holding our kids responsible too.
So what I see, it's been a few years since I've been in Dayton Public Schools, but I can actually say to you, it was happening when I was there. So I've been out of the district since 2019. For me, I believe that if you as a parent cannot talk with your kids and your kids cannot talk with you, I think it would be best that you would find someone that is a professional in that area and let them talk to your kids. As our culture, we didn't necessarily believe in mental health being something that was a part of us and addressing it and going to therapy. However, and I think we've all touched on that, some kind of way of saying, no, that's not us, that's not our culture. But guess what? It's our culture now. And that social and emotional piece that is happening now, it was happening before COVID, but you guys, it is now even at a heightened sense now. So it's even more. So if you personally cannot talk to your children, grandchildren, niece, nephews, whatever, find someone that can. There are a lot of organizations out here that are able to break it down on a child's level, to get them to open up. It is difficult. You have to be patient. You have to be slow at it. You can't rush it because it takes us a moment to warm up to someone before we're able to share. But some kind of way, we have to find out how we can get our kids to talking so we know exactly why are they so angry? Why are they so angry? Because we don't know. We as kids growing up, you just go outside and play. So if you were angry, you just go outside and play. Ride your bike until the street lights come on. You fine when you get in the house, you eat your dinner, you take your bag, be ready for school the next day. Now it's something totally different. So we need to find out why, what's going on. And then once we find out the why, we need to put something in place and let's make it happen. And we can do it all together as a community.
Affirmation, with these babies is gonna be key. We can't combat a lot of the things that we're seeing in the schools. The young people that we work with, the voices, are under so much more stress than I was growing up in the 90s as a teenager. What they're exposed to is a lot different than what I was exposed to. We have young men in my program now that have lost 8 friends in the last 6 months. They're dealing with addiction. They're dealing with a lot of different things. And I think one, it's important to acknowledge that kids are complex and they have these conflicting feelings and thoughts and they have these different pressures. We can't excuse the things that they're going through. It's just kid stuff and they need to toughen up because it is a different time. They are living in a constant cycle of looping news that they see police brutality in a different way. You know, when I was growing up, Rodney King was, splattered everywhere. But where do you put that as a 15, 16-year-old child when you're seeing the George Floyds and the Tamir Rice like every single day, right? And so that starts to impact like who you are, your identity, right? And we already know that they are looking for a sense of identity in all of these different spaces. And what they know of themselves is attacked every single angle on the media. It's a negative portrayal of Black men and Black families. In every space and everywhere they turn, they're seeing these negative labels put on themselves. And so it's causing them to be conflicted in who they are. And they're not given that space to fully develop as a child, should. And so the first thing, one, is just wrapping them in love. At any moment that you can, if that's a child in the neighborhood, if it's your own child, if it's whoever you're coming against, making sure that you're taking that time to affirm something positive about them because of things that they're seeing and what's on their shoulders. It's not the same teenager. It's not the same child growing up in the 80s and 90s than what we're seeing here. And so our approach has to match that same energy, right? We have to make sure that we are trying as best as we can to counter all of those negative images.
Yeah, and I want to be mindful of time. So this will be the last question that we extend to the panel. So along those lines, and Deja had mentioned about bullying and some of our youth and how they have that. Kia mentioned the constant loop of information, and Audrey had mentioned just like some of the mental health supports and why it's important that these things are addressed in a meaningful way. Certain information that we know about social media. Americans check their phone 46 times per day. Social media is addictive. Facebook envy is a real condition, according to some studies. Facebook is linked to greater social isolation. 81% of Americans check their phone while they're out to dinner. Comparing yourself to others hurts your mental health, and cyberbullying is a growing problem. And studies have proven that taking a break from social media can boost your mental health. So my question to the panel, and we've talked about how some of these things negatively impact the youth, so we can only imagine that they would impact us as well. What are, and as consumers of media and people who are deeply entrenched in this work, what do you find helpful in finding the balance between being informed and overconsumption? So we'll start with you, Deja.
I will say that I take social media hiatus for my mental health. When the police brutality cases are going on now, I do not watch them, for my mental health. I just had to figure out what I couldn't take and what it does for me. Like, I'm very empathetic, so like that type of stuff doesn't just like, oh man, like, let's go do a protest or let's strike something. It's like, it's making me sick, right? And it's like, why do we have to, like, let me just back away for a little bit. And that's when you get different sources, right? That's when you're in Gym City Market and you end up hearing somebody talking about something that you're interested in, or you're getting coffee and you hear somebody, word of mouth and things like that. And text people. I know I'm in like 60 group chats that haven't been read, but that's another way to reach people if the only thing they know how to do is text on their phone.
So self-care isn't easy for anybody. It's the hardest thing we do. And as mothers, we definitely slack when it came to self-care. So what we have to do and what I do personally is I'm a big component of meditation. Meditation is what gets my mind back right. And when you say take a break from social media, I get that. I do that as well. But meditation, and I'll take it a step further. I gotta pray. I gotta go into my closet. I gotta recharge, rejuvenate, and reset all those buttons that have been pushed from whatever is going on. So self-care to me, now that I'm getting older, is extremely important. And there are times when I don't answer my phone, I don't answer no text, because if it's an emergency, they'll keep blowing me up and then I'll know it's an emergency. If not, they'll find a way to get through it. But when it's time for me to take my self-care, it's big on me. I'm taking my self-care. So if somebody might not understand, well, why aren't you It's time for self-care. It's time for self-care. Because if you don't take self-care, your bodies will shut you down. Then what can you do? You're no good to anyone then. And I want to be able to still be out here and help as much as I can. So self-care is big on my list.
Over the past year, the thing that I have found to help me has been eating better and also exercising more, which, I was able to eat whatever I wanted to eat and, do whatever. And actually living in Chicago is more of a walkable city. So I lost weight, not knowing that I was losing weight. When I moved back home, it's more of not as walkable, more of a sedentary lifestyle. And so it's just like changing that dynamic. And to be quite honest, like, I'm too busy to be on social media. So I, again, say get involved with something. Like social media is a space that I play in or that I'm involved in because I need to know, what's going on with my cousins across the country or something like that, or what's going on, or what are different people's, ideas or opinions and things of that nature. But I'm really too busy to be on social media engaging in a manner that will cause harm.
Similar to me, I get yelled at a lot by folks in my organization because I'm not on social media as much as I probably should as an executive director. And I'm thankful that I didn't have to grow up in the time when everything is put on social media. I think the fights I got into in high school, I don't think that I would be sitting up here on this panel if all that stuff lives on the internet somewhere. So it doesn't impact me as much as I think it does others. I absolutely do not watch any of the police brutality videos. I don't watch any of those things. I don't find any comfort, any education value of seeing Black pain. But in terms of self-care, I am horrible at self-care, getting better. COVID definitely changed that. I got into gardening. It is like a whole little therapy session out there. I'm trying to grow everything and not be, to try to sustain off the land. So that's definitely helped. Meditation has helped. Reiki has helped. Just about anything that I can do to kind of escape the day-to-day stuff. But, as you said, doing this work day in and day out, I don't have to turn to social media, to see the trauma. I'm hearing it every day from our boys in our day reporting program. Or our family liberation program. And so I think that's what I need to learn how to separate from more so than social media.
Wow, 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 wow. Well, I would like, and if you could, give them a round of applause, everyone. We have truly been a wonderful conversation. I'm so grateful for, again, the change makers and the leaders of this community and in the greater community that are actually out there doing the work. They've given you insight, they've given you information and how to take those next steps. Maybe a next step is voting. Maybe a next step is coming to a meeting. You know, you never know what those things could be, but just getting engaged and being an active member in the process. So again, I thank the panel for this lovely discussion. On behalf of the Press and Publicity Committee, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we value you, the work that you're doing. Keep up the good work, and we will support you in every endeavor that we possibly can. But thank you all also for joining us for this wonderful, wonderful meeting.
And also, let's give it up to Chairlady Nicole Smith. Put together. What a phenomenal job that she did. And in fact, I think that she's raising the bar for some of our other committee chairs in the months to come. You know, so she's kind of raising that bar a little bit, and so we got to be prepared for that. But you have some takeaways. And listening at this distinguished panel. And, you know, I just want to make certain that these takeaways, that people really take a look at this and listen very closely. While I was in Los Angeles this past weekend, you're receiving that Image Award, but more importantly, when I was listening to Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union, and as you all touched on one of the subjects about bullying inside of schools, you know, their whole speech, and Dwayne Wade looked right directly inside that camera, was talking right directly to his child. And then Gabrielle Union got up and she basically echoed those sentiments about bullying and how they're taking that very seriously and getting to know your child. So that's something that the world is changing. And we got to be able to understand, and something else I heard is about relationship building. We got to understand how to cultivate various different types of relationships. There's an old song, old spiritual song, because I like what you said, Audrey, about praying, because that's what I do. You know, when I have been attacked on social media or attacked here, I go to my prayer, because that's really what keeps me whole. So I appreciate you talking about prayer. But the gleaming thing that I kind of heard is, you know, in this song it says, there's room at the cross for you. And when you think about that there's being room at the cross for you, think about there's so many other things that each one of us can be engaged in that we have no time, zero time to criticize anybody else. Zero time to criticize anyone else. None of us have come from the same backgrounds. And when we talk about criticizing someone else, a lot of times you don't even have the facts. Straight, I heard that come out today. You gotta have the facts about the man. You gotta know what the truth is. You just can't go on social media, or you just can't phone a friend and hear what your friend has to say about X, Y, and Z. Get to know that person for yourself. And oftentimes, when you don't know somebody for yourself, then what you do is you find yourself trying to tear somebody else down to build yourself. You can't cultivate relationships like that. You can't grow like that. There's room at the top for you. There's so much work to be done. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different organizations that come from various different disciplines of what their organizations do. There's a lot of other organizations that are out there, or businesses and your companies You go to market every day doing the best that you can. So we time for hate. There's only time to build relationships. Forward, you forward. Step forward. Move forward. And continue to do what you can do. Whatever it's called, you can do. To the best of your ability. Don't try to tell somebody else that. You do it wrong. So I think it's also this past weekend. For I was there from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I had an opportunity to witness how we all get along in our own spaces. Yes, there was someone else. Yes, but the guy told us for the people who went, he said there are no losers because we all came here for the same plan. Well, I had so there are. So when we think about that's what we need to be focused on. What can we do together, collectively, make this world a better place? Anybody individually can do anything that you want to do. But are you willing to work together? And the things that you cannot work together on, you don't have to. So let's continue. Because that's the spirit. Back there, what are the national things here? They just released the thing. That's our national theme going forward for the year 2023. Thriving together. Not apart. Not tearing somebody down, yourself. Thriving together. And I love that self-care. We all gotta have that self-care. Because when you don't take that self-care, when you don't take the initiative of that self-care, you won't be here to do God's will in your life. So with that, I think in the month of March, I think it's on youth programming, I believe. I think our youth groups has the month of March. Can anybody look real quickly? On your, is it Mark? Is it Youth and College Division? Okay, so next month, our Youth and College Division will have this same kind of panel discussion. They'll bring forth their own panelists. They come with their own topic for next month, meeting right here. Like the old one show, same back time, same back channel. 6 o'clock here at this August church called Grace United Methodist Church. We appreciate the pastor for extending and giving us an opportunity as neighbors to come here. Because we're in the Lord's house, so I knew there was time for hate. We're in the Lord's house, and I love it. Love every minute. So until the next time, outstanding job, outstanding job, outstanding job, outstanding job, outstanding job. And until the next time, may the Lord bless you, may the Lord bless the NAACP, and may God bless these United States of America. Thank you very much, everybody. Good evening.
Yes,